everyone feared the billionaire's temper, until the waitress decided she'd had enough. The restaurant was silent the moment Alexander Kane walked in. The billionaire CEO was infamous for his temper. He could destroy careers with a word, crush companies with a deal, and humiliate anyone who dared to cross him. Tonight was no different. He sat at the finest table, flanked by his executives, and barked orders without looking at the menu. "Make it fast," he snapped at the waitress. "If the food takes longer than 15 minutes, you're all out of a job." The staff trembled. They knew stories servers reduced to tears, managers begging for mercy. Nobody dared to stand up to him. Nobody except Claire. Claire wasn't just a waitress. She was a woman who had lost everything once her father's. Business had collapsed after Kane's ruthless takeover years ago. She had taken the job to support her younger brother in college, swallowing her pride every night. But tonight, she'd had enough. When Kane slammed his fist on the table, because his wine wasn't chilled enough, Claire calmly set the glass down in front of him. "You can fire me if you like," she said, her voice steady, "but bullying everyone here won't make you less lonely." The room froze. Forks stopped mid. No one had ever spoken to Alexander Kane like that. His eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" Claire didn't flinch. "I said, you use your power like a weapon. Maybe you forgot what it feels like to be human, but the rest of us haven't." The executives shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, Kane didn't shout. He stared at her, jaw tight. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed low, bitter at first, then genuine. "You've got guts," he said finally, leaning back. "Everyone else in this room is terrified of me, but not you. I've already lost more than you could take from me," Claire replied. "That makes me free." For the first time in years, Alexander Kane fell silent. No rage, no threats, just thought. The woman who had nothing had just shown him more strength than all the billionaires. He dealt with daily. And from that night on, the legend of his temper began to crumble because someone had finally stood up to him. The restaurant on Fifth Avenue was alive with chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the soft hum of a piano. But the moment Alexander Kane arrived, silence rippled through the room like a storm approaching. The billionaire was infamous. His temper was as legendary as his wealth. Stories swirled he once threw a $10,000 bottle of wine at a hotel manager's head because it wasn't the vintage he ordered. Fired an entire kitchen staff in Monaco because his entree was late, and reduced high-powered executives to stammering children with a single glare. Tonight, he swept in, wearing a tailored navy suit, his jaw set like stone. He was here with 5 executives, men and women, who hung on his every word, desperate to impress him and terrified of disappointing him. At the corner of the dining room, Claire Dawson adjusted her apron. 26 years old, she was used to demanding customers. But Alexander Kane was different. His shadow stretched across every employee in the restaurant. Her manager, a timid man named Richard, had already whispered warnings. "Don't mess this up, Claire. He can ruin us with a single review." Claire's jaw clenched. She knew exactly what Kane could ruin. Years ago, her father had owned a small shipping company. Kane's ruthless buyout had destroyed it, leaving her family bankrupt and her father broken. She had never forgotten the name that haunted their dinner table, Kane. Now here he was, in her section. The first clash, Claire approached his table with a polite smile. "Good evening. Can I get you started with drinks?" Kane didn't look at her. "Bring your best bottle of Bordeaux, and make it cold. Not warm, not room temperature. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Minutes later, she returned with the wine, carefully chilled. She poured a glass. Kane took one sip, slammed it down, and barked, "Do you think I'm an idiot? This isn't cold enough." The room froze. Claire's co-workers shrank into corners. Richard scurried over, bowing and apologizing profusely. But Claire stood her ground. She placed the glass firmly in front of Kane, It's exactly 46 degrees, she said, her voice calm. Any colder and the flavor would be ruined. Kane's eyes snapped to her, sharp as blades. Excuse me. Wine this good should be respected, Claire replied. Maybe the problem isn't the wine. Maybe it's the company. Gasps rose from nearby tables. Richard went pale, certain Claire had just signed her termination. Breaking the silence, Kane leaned back, studying her. His executives stared in horror, one of them mouthing, "She's dead." "What did you just say to me?" Kane asked slowly. Claire's hands trembled slightly, but she didn't back down. "I said, yelling at staff doesn't make the wine taste better, and it won't make you less miserable." The words hung in the air. For a long, dangerous moment, Kane said nothing. His temper was famous for erupting like a volcano. But this time he laughed, low, disbelieving at first, then louder. "You've got a mouth on you," he said, smirking. "Do you know how many people are afraid to even look me in the eye?" "Too many," Claire answered, "but I'm not one of them." Her voice carried across the dining room. Guests who had pretended not to listen now turned openly, watching the billionaire finally face someone who wasn't afraid. The shift Kane's expression softened not with kindness, but with something more complicated. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who's already lost more than you could take from me," Claire said evenly. "That makes me free." For a long time, he just stared at her. No shouting, no threats, no tantrum. The billionaire who had crushed titans of industry found himself disarmed by a waitress who had nothing to lose. Finally, he raised his glass again, swirling the wine. "You're either the stupidest waitress I've ever met, or the bravest." "Maybe both," she said, with a small smile. And for the first time in years, Alexander Kane fell silent. From that night forward, the story spread. The billionaire with the infamous temper had been put in his place not by another tycoon, not by a politician, but by a waitress who refused to bow. And suddenly, Kane's legend began to change.